Sure.
Peter McAvoy, 14 Langford. I've lived here 23 years when I bought the house. I did not buy from the builder, Jackson. I've always felt from the get-go, he subsidized for the first 10 years. And I've always felt that Jackson put the town to sleep. At least 10 years ago, I wanted to take legal action. I really felt that the town, there was malfeasance, something had occurred. And the fact of the matter is, it wasn't the actual hardware that had the problem, it was the leach fields. And they weren't adequate for that system. And the town knew it, and we were told by the previous town committee, Jack Schrein, everybody, oh, they felt our pain, and they were going to resolve this issue. But as Kathy had just stated, this thing has just festered and festered and festered, and nobody really wants to talk about it or resolve the issue. I understand now we have this hardware issue we're going to resolve, but the fact of the matter is those leach fields, I'm really concerned, are those adequate to handle the effluent going forward? And that loan was not for the hardware, it was for the leach fields. Because I feel that at that time, those leach fields were not adequate, from the outset for 82 homes, 80, 85 homes. And as a result, we are feeling the burden. And as Kathy mentioned, we now have to, this can impact, your resale value. My wife is a realtor in the community. She had a listing, and the listing, there was a buyer, and when they found out about the issue, they backed away. So the fact of the matter is, the town has an obligation to get involved in this issue and resolve this once and for all. It has not been resolved. It's been 23 years, and it's gone way too long. And the communication, as Kathy says, has been extremely weak.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
During this whole process that this was going on, was anyone in the community brought on board because they clearly have a stake in this?
Well, I think the process was a lot more complicated if you look on the back end. Looking at the presentation, it looks very easy. But, I mean, I was brought in during Phase 2, and there was already, I think, a bunch of time that happened before that. But it was just landing on, what are the viable solutions based on what we're dealing with. So there was a lot of technical things going on and happening, and not to the point where we actually landed on these 4 solutions. And chime in, you were part of it since day one, that we were able to say, okay, now these are our options. This is how much it potentially will cost, operating capital, etc., to invite them down to make this presentation.
So since they actually own it and we're just helping them, so to speak,
Yes.
we're they could. It was easier for us and more helpful for us to go get them because we have a better bond rating than they as a community would to go get the money. So they actually own it. We're helping them with it. So how can
we own it? We own it.
We own the plant. They owned it at one time. We now own it.
So we own it 100% and they don't own it anymore?
Right.
So I thought so then how come then all the taxpayers? So
They're the
How did that
users
happen?
of the system. They pay the fees to operate the system.
It's self-liquidating utility.
But to what is McAvoy? Is
Yeah.
that what is that your name again?
McAvoy.
McAvoy. To your point, to straighten this out, the physical plant needs to be corrected. The leach fields need to be corrected, and the proper financing so that someone who's going to buy or sell a home in that neighborhood who does their due diligence will say, there's a certain amount of reserves, I'm protected, I'm not going to have to worry about special assessments, fees increasing on me. All of those have to be addressed. And if they're addressed properly, your house shouldn't lose value, you should be able to sell it, you should be able to flush toilets, do whatever everybody else is able to do. That's our job now to solve this problem.
It sounds like not till next year.
Sandbrook, 9 Wainwright Road. So I've got to ask a really tough question. This is not a surprise to anybody. So where's the money? Why is there no reserve? I mean, we had our rates increase several years ago, I remember. They doubled, maybe, 8, 10 years ago. the things were looked at a long time ago. So, like, where's the money that I've been writing checks for every quarter?
That money was spent to maintain the facility. And it cost more to maintain it than you were sending in.
So we're actually in the red.
Right, so why didn't you let us know 5 years ago that we should write a bigger check? Were you know.
Good question.
I'm sorry.
You're absolutely right. It should have been addressed a couple of years ago. You probably should have been paying more money. And what reserve should have been, I have a feeling that it was done so that you weren't riled with a big increase. Somebody didn't want to do what should have been done was to charge more. I'm not certain of that, but you know, it's very difficult to sit here and say we're going to do the right thing and your rates are going to go up significantly so that you don't have this big whammy all at once. It's not a popular thing to do, but
So does the township have no fiscal responsibility for burdening, for shouldering a part of this cost? Is it all on us only?
You're the user of the...
So how many homes are there? Is it just Drakewick at 78, or is it the low-income housing as well?
I don't know how
I
many.
believe there might be some other homes that are tied in to that.
The homes, it's all of Drakewick and the low-income housing.
Right.
And do they pay the same rate?
They pay rates based on bedrooms or something.
Bedrooms in Drakewick, yeah, I believe it's bedrooms.
And you're absolutely right. This should have been discovered earlier. The committee wasn't aware of it. And the management, of course, that was running the town, it's all gone, so we're still
Well,
here.
from what I also understand, I don't know, the source of the data, but I had heard, and maybe it's just folklore or not, that the original system should never have been passed. That the inspector, something was afoul there. So
if there was, there's nothing we can do today about that. That's a fact that happened in the past. What we're trying to do is correct it now to move forward. We can't go backwards.
well, I would like Mendham Township Committee to consider shouldering a portion of the expense. Because
And on what basis?
on the basis that it's reducing our real estate values and we're a major portion of your tax base.
What we are doing is going through a capital refunding, which we believe will reduce the current debt to a degree. We can't tell you exactly what it is. It is a big problem. Drakewick, as you know, is part of the fabulous decision of housing, of Mount Laurel Housing. It was a court-approved settlement. The system installed was approved by the state of New Jersey. Engineers can tell you anything, but obviously the engineering of everything related to the system didn't work out the way it was supposed to. There's no question about that. But that's just, the state approved the system. I can't imagine how they can approve anything like that.
So it's a similar system that we're putting in is currently in Brook Race, is that correct?
No,
it's newer technology.
Totally different.
Right.
Let me just add something, though. I know you feel that it's expensive, but anyone who has a private septic system on their lot, if you have 4 or 5 acres and you have to replace your septic system,
I've been there as well. Yeah, I had.
okay, you're talking about a lot more than what you're going through, and the town doesn't help anyone.
I will echoes Kathy's response. Since, we're the people paying for it, we need to be brought in. We can't be.
I think communication needs to be
Yeah.
improved. I agree with that.
We're writing the checks. Not you guys aren't. So, we're the people that should be voting on this.
Can you just come up and state your name and address, please?
It's Kathy Sparrow at 15 Walsingham Road. And the one thing I do want to bring up is that I know you maybe didn't collect the right amount of money for 20 years or whatever. You can't go back and fix that. But it seems like now you're trying to take this small group of people that were unfortunate enough to buy a home in Mendham in this community, which this weekend we will be trampled on by all the trick-or-treaters in the state of New Jersey. But you seem to decide you want us to pay for the wrongs that have been done, and then also get you a little cushion for anything that might happen in the future. And I just feel like it's a little bit of a squeeze right now, and it's unfair for me as a homeowner. I've only lived there 10 years. And quite honestly, I don't really want to live there that much longer, especially now, considering everything that's going on. So you should recognize that for what you didn't do maybe before, and now what you're worried about doing in the future, you've decided to just squeeze it out of us. And I think it's a little aggressive for a group of people that, in some cases, some of them haven't even lived here that long. And so I just want you to think about that too. All right?
I'd like to ask a question, sort of a generic question. The communication aspect troubles me, and I agree there probably has not been sufficient communication. What can we do to resolve that problem as well?
I think what we should consider doing, Mr. Mayor, is we know the lot blocks and the addresses of all the affected residents. I think what we probably need to do is we need to send that postcard.
Well, we bill them anyway, so we have that in place. Just put it with the
whatever
bill.
we make sure they're all notified in some reasonable fashion.
I think you should go beyond that.
Well,
you have a homeowners association. I think the homeowners association representative should be with us deciding which way you want to go on this and how you want to fund it. I don't want to make those decisions.
Can you come up to the mic, please?
And in fairness, the homeowners association is strictly for the common land that we have to insure and maintain in and around Drakewick, which was also a burden that was placed on that property when you approved the plan for that man to build those homes. So that's what they do. And I don't want to crisscross and confuse those two, that organization with your due diligence to each individual homeowner that is part of that septic. They're not responsible. They're not an elective officer from this company, from this community. They're not a paid employee by this community. And I do not feel it's right to burden our trustees with the responsibility to give us notice and to make us understand what's taking place in that sewer plant. So I think you just remove that from your mind, because that's just, it's inappropriate.
I have a question. Are the lots big enough so that everyone, if they so choose, could opt out and put their own septic in?
I'm sure a condition of the approval was this package treatment.
Yeah.
This was a court settlement. What you see today is what the court approved. Not every last detail, but the basic layout. And, there's nothing the town could really do about it. We couldn't fight at that time. If we had fought, we could have ended up with something like the hills here. So we chose not to fight. We settled with the developer. It was the builder's remedy. And it's a sad truth, but that's what we ended up with. We can do better in terms of notification. We certainly have an email process, but I think we could certainly send out postcards and maybe plan a better strategy for meetings and have some more meetings with the residents.
Mayor Bauman?
Going forward, we can do that.
I recall when there was a discussion going on the development of Meadowwood and India Brook. A committee was formed with representatives from some of the interested parties, not only residents around the area, but also people who were experts or who had interest in the development of that piece of property. Could we set up a committee with Drakewick?
And again, I don't think we're here to sign a contract with anybody today to replace the plant. This presentation was meant to inform the customers of Mendham East of where we are at today.
So there'll be more discussions, for instance.
I don't think we've discussed about signing a contract of replacing and spending, X amount of dollars right now. There's a lot of due diligence that has to take place here, and this is the part of the process to inform where are we at as far as potential solutions.
And then there's also a grant application
may
alleviate some of the burden.
We might be talking about this again same time next year, for all we know. So, right. So the person for the homeowners association, they shouldn't do that. Can you tell my Brook Race Homeowners Association that I'm only responsible for the common areas? Because I get questions about the weirdest stuff. No, I'm the president of a homeowners association over there. So I would love just to have common area questions. So, go ahead. Sorry.
Rich Steigman again, 40 Walsingham Road. I guess I have a question in regards to a comment Mr. Mills made about, you said this was a self-liquidating utility. Is that what the agreement was in 1996 when the township assumed ownership of this plant? That as part of that transaction, the people in Drakewick agreed to pay all the costs associated with that plant?
I've not reviewed the agreement, but I think the reverse is the better way to look at it. I think it would, most of this, if not all the citizens of the non-Drakewick facility users were asked if they should chip in to the maintenance of it, their answer would be no, because they derive no benefit from it.
But isn't that similar, though, to people that don't have children that send kids to high school?
I can't speak to that. That's school and education are different than, they're not a utility.
I understand that, but I think it's an important thing to look at with respect to that transaction that created the ownership in 1996 of that plant by Mendham Township. Because another consideration is we probably should have some financial assistance in reviewing this package. You're talking about $2.7 million of debt on a sewer plant in a town like Mendham, and a sewer plant where all the debt coverage is assigned to 69 homeowners. So I think those two issues should be looked at together, because right now we know that plant is running in the red, and I presume that the township as a whole is paying for that overage, not the people of Drakewick, because you've already said that the revenues are less, and that's the only money. So we need to look at this situation from a town-wide perspective and not look at it as a Drakewick problem. And I think we need to do some searching back in the history and look at that buyout transaction when our township assumed that ownership of that facility. And then also to seek some financial help in a refinancing package. That just seems like an extremely high debt burden to relate to one community in town, based on those facts.
And to your point, maybe Mendham Township shouldn't be in the utility business.
Quite possible, but we are.
Well, the probable cause was that to borrow the money to fix the plant, we had to be involved. We were originally
so we took it over to help out,
plant.
and now we're...
And so later in the meeting, we're going to discuss the refunding, which is part of the process of trying to reduce the debt. We'll go over that in detail. Perhaps we need to have a special meeting on this issue.
But I think we
don't have a lot of time either. We need to move
It's
forward.
failing, so we need to do something sooner rather than later.
This needs to be moved on. So we probably need to have a meeting, maybe a special meeting in November.
And include members of the... Yeah.
With a special meeting, we would notify them all by an appropriate means. I think postcards is the most effective way. We certainly have email, but we want to make sure we capture everybody.
Dave, on the permitting process, okay, does that hinge on what technology is chosen?
Typically, particularly with the MVR stuff, because it's specialized.
And again, we haven't chose the technology. You've just made a recommendation on the best technology based on the current situation.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing it? Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
one little point. The next involvement, assuming we take that next step, would be to commission the preparation of specifications.
Correct.
For bidding.
Yeah, the scope of work, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, again, getting through this halfway in it, but the scope of work was just to determine the appropriate technology that possibly could replace the current
Well, and in
facility.
this process, too, the township has paid for the consultant services, have
Correct.
they not? And that hasn't been allocated to the residents
No.
of Drakewick. So there is, I mean, I think it should be noted that we are supporting the residents to the best of our ability at this point.
Yep.
And thank you for your explanation. It was very good.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
Continue to move forward.
Right. I know. But it's still going to take 6 months. So. Okay. Moving on to the agenda.